The gunshot wound in Wade Yates's shoulder had stopped bleeding 3 days ago, but the pain still clawed at him like a wild animal every time he moved wrong, and he was moving wrong now, trying to lift a water barrel onto the back of his wagon outside the general store in Seligman, Arizona. It was August of 1878, and the heat pressed down on everything like God's own fist, making even breathing feel like work. Wade had been a cowboy for 12 years, since he was 18 and tall enough to convince a trail boss he could handle himself. And in all that time, he had learned to keep his face blank, his mouth shut, and his feelings buried so deep that sometimes he forgot he had any at all. You are going to tear that wound open, and then you will bleed all over my clean porch, and I will have to scrub it, and I will be angry about it. The voice came from behind him, crisp and matter of fact, with the faintest trace of an accent he could not quite place. Wade turned, still gripping the barrel, and found himself looking at a woman standing in the doorway of the general store. She was maybe 22 or 23, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that were an unusual shade of amber, like honey held up to sunlight. She wore a simple calico dress that had been mended in several places, and she was looking at him with the kind of expression a person might give a stubborn mule. I have got it, Wade said, his voice rough from disuse. He did not talk much these days, did not have much reason to. You do not have it, she said, stepping out onto the porch. You are shaking, and you are pale, and you are being ridiculous. She walked past him, grabbed the other side of the barrel with surprising strength, and helped him hoist it onto the wagon bed. Then she dusted off her hands and looked at him with raised eyebrows. There. Was that so difficult? Wade stared at her. He was not accustomed to women talking to him like this. Most women in town avoided him because he was not much for socializing, and the few who tried to flirt with him usually gave up when he failed to respond with anything resembling charm. This woman, though, seemed entirely unimpressed by his silence. I could have managed, he said. Yes, and I could sprout wings and fly to California, but neither of those things was going to happen today. She tilted her head, studying his face. You are Wade Yates, yes? You work at the Copper Creek Ranch? I do. I am Elena Cortez. I have been working at the general store for 2 weeks now. Mr. Patterson hired me after his wife passed. She paused, and something like sympathy flickered across her features. I am sorry about your shoulder. I heard about the trouble with the rustlers. Wade shifted his weight, uncomfortable with her attention. The rustlers had come in the night, trying to make off with 20 head of cattle. He had taken a bullet stopping them, but it had been worth it. The cattle were safe. His boss, Daniel Marsh, had been grateful enough to give him a week to recover, though Wade had come back to work after 3 days because he did not know what else to do with himself. It is healing, he said. Elena Cortez looked at him for a long moment, and then, inexplicably, she laughed. It was not a polite titter or a nervous giggle. It was a real laugh, full and genuine, and it transformed her entire face. You are a terrible liar, she said. You look like you are about to fall over, but you are too stubborn to admit it. Wade felt something strange happen inside his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as the urge to smile. He fought it down, schooled his features back into blankness, and said, I need to get back to the ranch. Of course you do. She was still smiling, though, as if she found him amusing in some way he could not fathom. Try not to die on the way there, Mr. Yates. I would hate to have to explain to Mr. Marsh that I let his best hand bleed out in the middle of town. He wanted to tell her that he was not Daniel's best hand, that there were plenty of cowboys more skilled and more reliable than he was. But the words stuck in his throat, and all he managed was a curt nod before climbing onto the wagon seat. As he drove away, he glanced back once and saw her still standing on the porch, watching him with an expression he could not read. That night, lying in his bunk at the ranch, Wade replayed the conversation in his mind. It had been such a small thing, barely worth remembering, and yet he could not stop thinking about the way she had laughed. It had been years since anyone had laughed in his presence, much less because of something he had said or done. His mother used to laugh, back when he was a boy in Missouri, before the fever took her. His father had been a hard man, silent and cold, and after she died, their house had felt like a tomb. Wade had left as soon as he was old enough, headed west to escape the suffocating quiet, but he had brought that silence with him. It lived in his bones now, a part of him as essential as breath. The sound of Elena's laughter, though, that had been something different, something bright and unexpected, like a sudden rainstorm in the desert. He told himself it did not matter. He would pick up supplies in town again eventually. But it was not as if he would see her every time. Seligman was not a large town, but it was big enough that a person could go days without running into someone specific. He would forget about her, about the way her eyes had crinkled at the corners when she smiled, about the faint accent that made her words sound like music. But 3 days later, when he rode into town to collect a package for Daniel, Wade found himself tying his horse outside the general store instead of the post office. He told himself it was because he needed to pick up tobacco, even though he had half a pouch left in his saddlebag. Elena was behind the counter when he walked in, writing something in a ledger. She looked up and recognition flashed across her face. "Mr. Yates," she said, "I see you survived." "I did." "Your shoulder?" "Still attached." She smiled, just a little. "That is good. It would be inconvenient if you had lost it." She set down her pencil and folded her hands on the counter. "What can I help you with today?" Wade glanced around the store, trying to think of something plausible. "Tobacco," he said finally. Elena raised one eyebrow. "You were just in here 3 days ago. You bought tobacco then." He felt heat creep up his neck. "I use a lot of it." Clearly. She did not move to get the tobacco, though. Instead, she leaned against the counter and studied him with those disconcerting amber eyes. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Yates?" He nodded, wary. "Do you ever smile?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Smile. You know that thing people do with their mouths when they are happy?" She demonstrated, her lips curving upward in a way that made his chest feel tight. "I have seen you twice now, and both times you have looked like you are attending a funeral." Wade did not know what to say to that. He wanted to tell her that smiling felt foreign to him now, like trying to speak a language he had forgotten. He wanted to explain that he had spent so many years keeping his emotions locked away that he was not sure he remembered how to let them out. But those words were too honest, too raw, and he did not know her well enough to share them. "I do not have much to smile about," he said instead. Elena tilted her head, considering him. "That is sad," she said quietly. Then before he could respond, she straightened and walked to the shelf where the tobacco was kept. She grabbed a pouch and brought it back to the counter. 50 cents. He paid, took the tobacco, and turned to leave. But as he reached the door, her voice stopped him. "Mr. Yates?" He looked back. "If you ever want to talk about anything at all, I am here most days. I am told I am a good listener." Her expression was open, sincere, and it made something twist in his gut. "I will keep that in mind," he said, and then he left before she could say anything else. Over the next few weeks, Wade found excuses to go into town more often than usual. He needed nails, he needed salt, he needed a new whetstone for his knife. Each time he went to the general store, and each time Elena was there. She greeted him with the same friendly warmth, never seeming annoyed by his frequent visits or his lack of conversational skills. She talked to him about the weather, about the customers who came through, about the stray dog that had started hanging around the back of the store. Wade mostly listened, offering only the occasional grunt or one-word response, but Elena did not seem to mind. She filled the silence with her own words, and somehow it did not feel oppressive the way silence usually did. It felt almost comfortable. One afternoon in early September, Wade came into the store and found Elena trying to move a heavy crate of canned goods. She was struggling with it, her face flushed with effort, and without thinking, he crossed the room and took the crate from her. Where do you want it? He asked. Over there by the far wall. She pressed a hand to her chest, catching her breath. Thank you. Mr. Patterson ordered far too many of those, and I have been trying to organize them all morning. Wade set the crate down where she had indicated. When he turned back, Elena was watching him with a thoughtful expression. You are always helping people, are you not? She said. It was just a crate. But you did not have to help. You could have ignored me and bought whatever you came in for and left, but you did not. She paused. You are a good man, Wade Yates. I do not think you realize that. He felt uncomfortable under her gaze, as if she could see past the walls he had built around himself. I should go, he said. Wait. Elena reached out and touched his arm, stopping him. Her hand was warm even through his shirt sleeve. I am making supper tonight. Just stew, nothing fancy. But there will be more than enough for two. And I thought, if you were not busy, you might want to join me. Wade stared at her, his mind racing. He could not remember the last time someone had invited him to share a meal. The other ranch hands sometimes sat together around the fire at night, passing a bottle and swapping stories, but Wade never joined them. He preferred to eat alone, away from the noise and the laughter that reminded him of everything he had lost. But the way Elena was looking at him, with something like hope in her eyes, made it hard to say no. I do not want to impose, he said finally. You would not be imposing. I am inviting you. She smiled, and there it was again, that brightness that seemed to cut through the darkness he carried with him. Please? All right, he heard himself say. What time? 6 o'clock. I live in the little house behind the store, the one with the blue door. You cannot miss it. Wade nodded, already regretting his decision. But it was too late to take it back now, and part of him, a part he did not want to examine too closely, was glad. He spent the rest of the afternoon working at the ranch, repairing fences, and checking on the cattle, but his mind kept drifting back to the invitation. He told himself it was just supper, nothing more. Elena was being kind, the way any decent person would be. It did not mean anything. At 5:45, he washed up as best he could, changed into a clean shirt, and rode back into town. The little house with the blue door was easy to find, just as Elena had said. He tied his horse to the fence post and knocked. Elena opened the door almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for him. She had changed out of her work dress into something a little nicer, a dark green cotton dress with small white flowers embroidered along the neckline. Her hair was still pulled back, but a few loose strands framed her face, softening her features. You came, she said, and she sounded genuinely pleased. I said I would. Yes, but I was not sure you would actually follow through. You seem like the type to change your mind at the last minute. She stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. Please, make yourself at home. The house was small but tidy, with whitewashed walls and simple furniture. A pot of stew simmered on the stove, filling the air with the rich smell of beef and vegetables. There was a small table set for two, with mismatched plates and cups that looked like they had been collected over time. Wade took off his hat and stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, unsure what to do with himself. Elena seemed to sense his discomfort and laughed softly. You can sit down, Mr. Yates. I promise the chair will not bite. He sat, feeling strangely out of place. Elena ladled stew into 2 bowls and brought them to the table, then poured water from a pitcher into their cups. She sat down across from him and folded her hands. Thank you for coming, she said. I know it might seem strange inviting you like this, but I have been in Seligman for almost a month now, and I have not really had the chance to get to know anyone. Most people are friendly enough, but they keep their distance. I think they see me as an outsider. Where are you from? Wade asked, surprising himself. He was not usually one to initiate conversation. Mexico, originally. A small village near Hermosillo. My family came to Arizona when I was 10 looking for work. My father found a job at a copper mine, and we settled in a town about 50 miles south of here. She took a sip of water. He died 2 years ago, a collapse in the mine. My mother passed when I was young, so after he was gone, there was nothing keeping me there. I decided to move north to find a new start. I am sorry, Wade said, and he meant it. He knew what it was like to lose family, to be adrift in the world without an anchor. Elena shrugged, but there was sadness in her eyes. It is life. People die, we survive. That is all we can do. She picked up her spoon and gestured to his bowl. Eat, please. It is better warm. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The stew was good, hearty and flavorful, better than anything Wade usually made for himself. He found himself relaxing slightly, the tension in his shoulders easing. Can I ask you something? Elena said after a while. I suppose. Why do you always look so sad? The question was blunt, but not unkind. Wade set down his spoon and stared at his bowl. He could deflect, change the subject, shut down the conversation. That was what he usually did. But there was something about the way Elena was looking at him, with genuine curiosity and no judgment, that made him want to answer honestly. I do not know how to be any other way, he said quietly. My mother died when I was young. My father was not a warm man. I grew up in a house where nobody smiled, nobody laughed. And then I left, and I have been on my own ever since. I suppose I just got used to being alone. Elena was quiet for a moment, absorbing his words. That sounds lonely. It is, Wade admitted. He had never said that out loud before, never allowed himself to acknowledge it. But now that the words were out, he felt a strange sense of relief. You do not have to be alone, you know, Elena said gently. Not if you do not want to be. Wade looked up and met her eyes. There was warmth there, an openness that both terrified and comforted him. I do not know how to be anything else. Then maybe it is time to learn. She smiled, and it was not a pitying smile or a condescending one. It was simply kind. You could start by smiling every now and then. I think it would suit you. Wade felt the corner of his mouth twitch, almost involuntarily. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. Elena's eyes lit up when she saw it. There, she said triumphantly. See? You can do it. And then Wade did something he had not done in years. He laughed. It was a short, rough sound, barely more than a chuckle, but it was real. And the moment it left his lips, he felt something inside him crack open, just a little. Elena's face broke into a wide grin. I knew it, she said. I knew you had it in you. Wade shook his head, feeling strangely self-conscious. I do not know what you are talking about. You laughed. That was a laugh. Do not try to deny it. She leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with amusement. And it was a nice laugh, too. You should do it more often. I will keep that in mind. They finished their meal, and the conversation flowed more easily after that. Elena told him about the customers at the store, about the old prospector who came in every week to buy whiskey and complain about his bad luck, about the young widow who was struggling to keep her farm running after her husband died. Wade found himself sharing stories from his own life, small things he had never bothered to tell anyone before. He talked about the ranch, about the cattle drives he had been on, about the time a rattlesnake had gotten into the bunkhouse and caused a stampede of grown men scrambling to get away. Elena laughed at that, a bright, infectious sound that filled the small house. And when she laughed, Wade found himself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than he could remember. When the evening ended and Wade prepared to leave, Elena walked him to the door. Thank you for coming, she said. I enjoyed this. So did I, Wade admitted. Then you should come back, maybe next week? He hesitated, but only for a moment. I would like that. Elena's smile was radiant. Good, it is a date then. Wade rode back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, and for the first time in years, he felt something other than the heavy weight of loneliness. He felt hope. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Wade came into town whenever he could, sometimes for supplies, sometimes just to see Elena. They talked more easily now, the initial awkwardness fading as they grew more comfortable with each other. Elena had a way of drawing him out, of making him talk about things he had never discussed with anyone. She asked him about his dreams, about what he wanted from life, about the things that made him happy. And Wade, to his surprise, found that he had answers to those questions, even if they were buried deep. He also learned more about her. Elena had a sharp mind and a quick wit. She could calculate sums in her head faster than Wade could write them down, and she had a gift for reading people, for understanding what they needed even when they did not say it out loud. She loved books, though she did not have many, and she would talk for hours about the stories she had read, her eyes lighting up as she described the characters and plots. She had a temper, too, which Wade discovered one afternoon when a drunk cowboy came into the store and made a crude comment. Elena had thrown him out with a string of Spanish curses that made Wade's ears burn, and he had fallen a little bit in love with her right then and there. It was a gradual thing, falling in love. Wade did not realize it was happening until it had already happened. One day he looked at Elena and felt his chest tighten with something that was not pain or fear, but something warm and overwhelming. He thought about her constantly, wondered what she was doing, replayed their conversations in his mind. When he was with her, the world felt brighter, more vivid, as if someone had lit a lamp in a dark room. And when he was away from her, he counted the hours until he could see her again. But he did not tell her. How could he? She was beautiful and kind and full of life, and he was just a cowboy with nothing to offer. He had no land, no money, no prospects. What could he possibly give her, except a hard life and uncertain future? So he kept his feelings to himself and tried to be content with her friendship. But it was getting harder every day, especially when she smiled at him, or touched his hand, or said something that made his heart race. One evening in late October, Elena invited him to supper again. The weather had cooled slightly, though Arizona heat was stubborn even in autumn. Wade arrived at her house and found her sitting on the front step, staring at the horizon. She looked troubled, and when she saw him, she did not smile. "What is wrong?" Wade asked, sitting down beside her. Elena sighed. "Mr. Patterson is selling the store." Wade felt his stomach drop. "What?" "He told me today. His daughter in California wants him to come live with her, and he has decided to go. He is putting the store up for sale, and he expects it to sell quickly. The new owner will probably bring in their own people to run it, which means I will be out of a job." She looked at him, and there was worry in her eyes. "I do not know what I will do, Wade. I have a little money saved, but not enough to last more than a few weeks. And there are not many jobs in Seligman, especially not for a woman." Wade's mind raced. The thought of Elena leaving town, of never seeing her again, was unbearable. "You could find work somewhere else," he said, though the words tasted bitter. "Maybe. But where and how would I get there? I do not have enough money to travel far, and I do not know anyone outside of Seligman." She wrapped her arms around herself, looking small and vulnerable in a way he had never seen before. "I am scared, Wade. I have been on my own for so long, and I thought I had finally found a place to settle. But now it feels like everything is falling apart again." Wade reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her deliberately, and her skin was warm and soft against his. "You are not alone," he said firmly. "I will help you figure this out. We will find a solution." Elena looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Why are you so kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness." The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest. "Because you have given me more in the last few months than anyone has given me in years. Because I—" He stopped, unsure if he should continue. But Elena was looking at him with such intensity, such hope that he could not hold back. Because I care about you, he said. More than I should. Probably. More than is wise. Elena's breath hitched. Wade, I know I have no right to say that, he continued, the words tumbling out now that he had started. I know I am just a cowboy with nothing to offer you. But I cannot stand the thought of you leaving. I cannot stand the thought of not seeing you again. For a moment, Elena just stared at him. Then slowly she smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was there. You think you have nothing to offer me? I do not. That is not true. She squeezed his hand. You have given me friendship when I had none. You have made me feel less alone in a place where I felt like an outsider. You have made me laugh, and you have listened when I needed to talk. That is not nothing, Wade. That is everything. Wade felt his throat tighten. Elena, I care about you too, she said softly. I have for a while now. I was just too afraid to say it. And then, before Wade could fully process what was happening, Elena leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and tentative, as if she was unsure of his reaction, but it sent a jolt through him like lightning. For a moment he froze, too stunned to respond. Then instinct took over and he kissed her back, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. She tasted like cinnamon and warmth, and Wade felt as if he was waking up after a long, dreamless sleep. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Elena's cheeks were flushed and she was smiling. I have wanted to do that for weeks, she admitted. Wade laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. So have I. They sat there on the step, holding hands and watching the sun set, and Wade felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they faced, he knew they would face them together. Over the next few days, Wade threw himself into finding a solution to Elena's problem. He talked to Daniel Marsh, his boss, and asked if there was any work at the ranch for her. Daniel was sympathetic, but explained that they did not need any additional help. And besides, ranch work was hard and physical, not suited for most women. Wade then approached other ranchers in the area, but the answer was always the same. There were no jobs available. Desperate, Wade began to consider other options. He thought about leaving Seligman, about finding work in another town where Elena could come with him. But the idea of abandoning the only stable job he had ever had, of uprooting both their lives on the slim hope of finding something better, seemed reckless. Then, one afternoon, an idea came to him. It was risky, and it would require using almost all the money he had saved over the years, but it might work. He found Elena at the store, sorting through inventory. She looked up when he walked in, and her face brightened. Wade, I was hoping you would come by. I need to talk to you, he said. It is important. She set down the ledger she had been working on and came around the counter. What is it? Wade took a deep breath. I have an idea. It might not work, but I think it is worth trying. Tell me. What if we bought the store? Elena blinked. What? Mr. Patterson is selling it, right? What if we pooled our money and bought it ourselves? You could run it and I could help when I am not working at the ranch. It would be ours, a place that nobody could take away from us. Elena stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Wade, that is a huge risk. What if it does not work? What if we lose everything? Then we lose everything, Wade said. But at least we will have tried. At least we will be together. She shook her head slowly, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes. Do you even have enough money for that? I have been saving for years. It is not a fortune, but it might be enough. Combined with whatever you have, we could make an offer. Mr. Patterson might accept it if he is eager to leave. Elena bit her lip, thinking, this is crazy. Maybe, but staying here, losing you, that feels even crazier to me. She looked at him for a long moment, and then she nodded. All right, let us do it. They approached Mr. Patterson the next day. He was an older man, in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. When Wade and Elena explained their proposal, he listened carefully, stroking his beard. That is a generous offer, he said finally. But I have to ask, are you two married? Wade and Elena exchanged a glance. Not yet, Wade said. Not yet, Mr. Patterson repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. Well, I appreciate your honesty, but I have to tell you, owning a store is hard work. It is not just about selling goods. You have to manage inventory, deal with difficult customers, keep the books balanced. It is a full-time job, maybe more. I know, Elena said. I have been working here for months. I know what it takes. And you, Mr. Yates, you are a cowboy. What do you know about running a store? Not much, Wade admitted. But I can learn, and I am willing to work as hard as it takes. Mr. Patterson studied them both, his expression thoughtful. Then, slowly, he smiled. You know what? I believe you. I have seen the way you two look at each other. You have got something special, something worth fighting for, and I would rather sell this place to people who will care about it than to some stranger who just sees it as a way to make money. He extended his hand. You have got a deal. The store is yours. Wade shook his hand, hardly daring to believe it. Beside him, Elena let out a little gasp of joy and threw her arms around him. Wade held her tightly, feeling a surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. They finalized the sale over the next week. Mr. Patterson was true to his word, and the transfer of ownership went smoothly. Wade signed over almost all his savings, and Elena contributed what she had. When it was done, they stood together in the store, looking around at shelves and counters that were now theirs. I cannot believe we did it, Elena said, her voice filled with wonder. Neither can I. She turned to him, her eyes serious. This is a partnership, Wade. We are in this together, as equals. I do not want you to think you have to take care of me or protect me. I can pull my own weight. I know you can, Wade said. But that does not mean I will not try to help. Elena smiled. I would expect nothing less. She paused, then added, There is one more thing we need to talk about. What is that? Mr. Patterson asked if we were married. We said not yet, but do you want to be? Married, I mean. Wade's heart skipped a beat. He had thought about it, of course. He had thought about it constantly. But he had not been sure if Elena wanted the same thing. Do you? He asked. I do, she said simply. I love you, Wade. I know we have not known each other for very long, but I feel like I have known you forever. You make me laugh, and you make me feel safe, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Wade cupped her face in his hands, looking into her amber eyes. I love you too, he said, and the words felt like a revelation. I did not think I was capable of loving anyone, but you changed that. You changed everything. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Then let us get married, as soon as possible. They were married 2 weeks later, in a small ceremony at the church in Seligman. Daniel Marsh stood as Wade's witness, and one of Elena's regular customers, a kindly older woman named Mrs. Dawson, stood as hers. The ceremony was simple and quick, but when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Wade felt a sense of completeness he had never known before. That night, they went back to Elena's little house with the blue door, which was now their house. They had decided to live there rather than at the ranch, since it was closer to the store and more practical. Wade had moved his few belongings in the day before, and now he looked around the small space and realized that for the first time in his life, he had a home. Elena came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Are you happy? She asked. Wade turned and pulled her close. I am, he said, and he meant it. I did not think I could be, but I am. Good. She stood on her toes and kissed him. Because I plan to keep you happy for a very long time. The first few months of running the store were challenging. Wade continued working at the ranch during the day, which meant Elena handled most of the store's operations on her own. But in the evenings and on his days off, Wade helped with restocking shelves, balancing the books, and making deliveries. They worked well together, falling into a rhythm that felt natural. Elena handled the customers with ease, her friendly demeanor making her popular in town, while Wade took care of the heavier tasks and the financial side of things. Money was tight at first. They had spent most of their savings buying the store, and it took time to build up a steady profit. But they were careful and frugal, and slowly things began to improve. By the spring of 1879, they were making enough to cover their expenses and even put a little aside. Wade found that he liked the work more than he had expected. There was something satisfying about building a business with Elena, about creating something that was theirs. And more than that, he liked being around her all the time, liked the way she hummed while she worked, the way she asked his opinion on things, the way she looked at him with love and trust. One evening in April, as they were closing up the store, Elena seemed unusually quiet. Wade noticed and asked if something was wrong. She hesitated, then said, "I need to tell you something." Wade felt a flicker of worry. "What is it?" Elena took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I am pregnant." For a moment, Wade just stared at her, his mind struggling to process the words. Then the meaning sank in, and a wave of emotion crashed over him. "You are—" "I am," she said, watching his face anxiously. "I know we did not plan for this so soon, and I know money is still tight, but I am happy about it, Wade. I want this baby." Wade pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly that she laughed, and told him to ease up. "I am happy too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I am so happy I do not even have words for it." Elena pulled back to look at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "Really? Really?" Wade kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You have given me everything, Elena. A home, a purpose, a reason to smile, and now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve you, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." Elena laughed through her tears. "You already are worthy of it, you stubborn man. You just do not see it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Elena continued working at the store, though Wade insisted she take it easy and not lift anything heavy. He became even more protective of her, which she found both endearing and exasperating. She told him repeatedly that she was not made of glass, but Wade could not help himself. The thought of anything happening to her or the baby terrified him in a way nothing else ever had. As Elena's belly grew, Wade found himself thinking about the future in ways he never had before. He thought about what kind of father he would be, whether he would be any good at it. His own father had been cold and distant, and Wade worried that he might repeat those patterns, but Elena reassured him, telling him that he had a good heart and that was all that mattered. In late November, Elena went into labor. It was a long, difficult process that lasted through the night and into the next day. Wade stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. He had faced down rustlers and wild animals without flinching, but watching Elena in pain was the hardest thing he had ever done. Finally, just after dawn, the baby was born. It was a boy, small but healthy, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that announced his arrival to the world. The midwife cleaned him up and placed him in Elena's arms, and Wade looked down at his son and felt his entire world shift. "He is perfect," Elena whispered, exhausted but radiant. Wade touched the baby's tiny hand, and the infant's fingers curled around his thumb. "He is," Wade agreed, his voice thick with emotion. They named him Samuel, after Elena's father. Samuel Yates grew quickly, a happy baby who rarely cried and who seemed to find everything around him endlessly fascinating. Wade discovered that he loved being a father, loved watching his son learn and grow, loved the way Samuel's face lit up when Wade came home from work. Elena thrived as a mother, somehow managing to balance caring for Samuel with running the store and still finding time to laugh and joke with Wade. The years that followed were the happiest of Wade's life. The store continued to do well, and they were able to hire a young man named Tom to help with some of the heavier work, which freed up more of Wade's time. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who loved to help in the store and who had his mother's quick mind and his father's quiet determination. In 1882, Elena gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. She was smaller and more delicate than Samuel had been, with Wade's gray eyes and Elena's dark hair. Wade fell in love with her instantly, and he discovered that having a daughter brought out a tenderness in him he had not known he possessed. Samuel adored his little sister and was fiercely protective of her, even as a small child. Wade and Elena would often find him sitting next to her cradle, telling her stories or singing to her in a surprisingly sweet voice. It reminded Wade of the family he had lost so long ago, but instead of pain, the memory now brought a bittersweet warmth. He had a family again, and this time he would do everything in his power to keep them safe and happy. One evening in the summer of 1883, Wade and Elena sat on the porch of their house watching Samuel and Rose play in the yard. Rose was toddling around, chasing after a butterfly, while Samuel kept a careful eye on her to make sure she did not fall. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air was finally starting to cool after another scorching day. Elena leaned her head on Wade's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different your life might have been if you had not come into the store that day?" she asked. Wade considered the question. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "But then I realize it does not matter. All that matters is that I did come in, and I met you, and everything changed." Elena smiled. "You have changed too, you know. When I first met you, you were so serious, so closed off. Now you smile all the time. You laugh. You are happy." "That is because of you," Wade said. "You are the only woman who ever made me laugh. I did not even realize I had missed that sound until I heard it again." Elena lifted her head to look at him. "I did not make you laugh. You always had it in you. I just helped you remember how." Wade kissed her, slow and sweet. "Either way, I am grateful. For you. For our children. For this life. I never thought I could have something like this." "Well, you do," Elena said firmly. "And you are stuck with us now. I can think of worse fates." Elena laughed and swatted his arm playfully. Then she called out to the children, "Samuel, Rose, come here. It is time to go inside." Samuel took his sister's hand and led her back to the porch. Rose climbed into Wade's lap, and he wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. Samuel sat next to Elena, and she ruffled his hair affectionately. "Tell us a story, Papa," Rose said, her voice still babyish and adorable. "What kind of story?" Wade asked. "A funny one." Wade glanced at Elena, who was smiling at him with such love that it made his chest ache. "All right," he said. "Let me think." He launched into a silly tale about a cowboy who could not stop sneezing and kept scaring away all the cattle, embellishing it with exaggerated sound effects that made both children dissolve into giggles. Elena laughed too, that bright, infectious laugh that Wade loved so much, and he felt a profound sense of contentment. This was his life now. Laughter and love and family. He had spent so many years alone, convinced that he was not meant for happiness, that he did not deserve it. But Elena had shown him otherwise. She had taught him how to open his heart again, how to let people in, how to find joy in the small moments. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Wade looked around at his family and realized that he had everything he had ever wanted, even if he had not known he wanted it. He had a wife who loved him, children who filled his days with laughter, and a home that was more than just a place to sleep. He had a life worth living, And it had all started with a laugh. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing its own challenges and triumphs. The store thrived, becoming a cornerstone of the Seligman community. Wade eventually left his job at the ranch to work at the store full time, a decision that allowed him to spend more time with his family. Daniel Marsh understood and even threw a small party to wish him well, telling Wade that he had been one of the best hands he had ever had. In 1885, Elena gave birth to their third child, another boy they named James. He was a robust baby with a loud cry and a voracious appetite, and he kept Elena and Wade on their toes. Samuel, now 6 years old, took his role as the oldest very seriously and appointed himself James's protector, much as he had done with Rose. Rose, at 3, was delighted to have another sibling and insisted on helping with everything, from changing diapers to singing lullabies, though her enthusiasm often caused more chaos than assistance. Wade found himself marveling at how full his life had become. Where once there had been only silence and solitude, there was now constant noise and activity. The house was never quiet. There were always children laughing or arguing or asking questions, and instead of finding it overwhelming, Wade found it comforting. It reminded him that he was not alone, that he was part of something bigger than himself. Elena was the heart of their family. She managed the store, cared for the children, and still found time to be a loving and attentive wife. Wade did not know how she did it, but he was in awe of her strength and resilience. She never complained, even when things were difficult, and she had a way of making every day feel like an adventure. One afternoon in the fall of 1886, Wade was working at the store when a stranger walked in. He was a tall man, somewhere in his 40s, with a weathered face and the bearing of someone who had spent his life on the frontier. He looked around the store with a critical eye before approaching the counter where Wade stood. "Are you the owner?" the man asked. "I am," Wade said. "Wade Yates. Can I help you with something?" The man extended his hand. "Name is Charles Bennett. I am passing through on my way to California, and I heard this was the best place in town to stock up on supplies." Wade shook his hand. "We try to keep a good selection. What do you need?" As Wade helped Charles gather the items he needed, they fell into conversation. Charles was a prospector who had been searching for gold and silver in Arizona and New Mexico for the past decade. He had not struck it rich, but he had made enough to keep going, and he was hopeful that California would bring him better luck. "What about you?" Charles asked. "You always been a shopkeeper?" "No," Wade said. "I was a cowboy for years before this. My wife and I bought the store together a few years back." "Your wife?" Charles raised an eyebrow. "She works here too?" "She is home with our children today, but yes, she usually works here. This is as much her business as it is mine." Charles nodded approvingly. "That is good. A man who respects his wife is a man worth knowing." He paused, then added, "You seem happy, Mr. Yates. That is a rare thing out here." Wade considered the statement. "I am," he said simply. "I did not used to be, but I am now." "Well, hold on to it," Charles said. "Happiness is hard to come by, and even harder to keep." After Charles left, Wade thought about his words. He was right. Wade was happy, truly happy, in a way he had never imagined possible. And he was determined to hold on to that happiness, to protect it and nurture it, for as long as he lived. In 1888, when Samuel was 10, Rose was 6, and James was 3, Elena told Wade that she was pregnant again. Wade was overjoyed, though he was also a little nervous about having 4 children. But Elena was calm and confident, and she assured him that they would manage just fine. Their 4th child, a girl they named Clara, was born in the spring of 1889. She was a quiet baby, content to observe the world around her with wide, curious eyes. Samuel, Rose, and James were all smitten with their new sister, and the house was filled with even more love and laughter. As the children grew, Wade made sure to spend time with each of them individually. He took Samuel on hunting trips, teaching him how to track and shoot. He helped Rose learn to read, sitting with her every evening as she sounded out words from the books they kept in the house. He played games with James, who had boundless energy and a mischievous streak that reminded Wade of himself as a boy. And he held Clara whenever she cried, rocking her gently and singing to her in a low, soothing voice. Elena watched him with their children and often told him that he was a wonderful father. Wade always protested, saying that he was just doing his best, but deep down he was proud. He had broken the cycle of coldness and distance that his own father had perpetuated. His children knew they were loved, and they knew they could always come to him no matter what. One evening in 1891, Wade and Elena were sitting on the porch again, a habit they had maintained over the years. The children were inside, supposedly getting ready for bed, though Wade could hear them giggling and talking. He smiled, knowing that Elena would eventually go in and settle them down, but for now, they were content to let the children have a few more minutes of freedom. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked suddenly. Wade looked at her surprised. "Regret what?" "This life. Marrying me, having children, running the store. Do you ever wish you had stayed a cowboy, free to go wherever you wanted?" Wade took her hand and laced their fingers together. "Never," he said firmly. "Not once. Before I met you, I was not free. I was just alone. There is a difference." Elena smiled, but there was something wistful in her expression. "I worry sometimes that I have taken away your independence, that you feel trapped." "Elena, look at me." Wade waited until she met his eyes. "You have not taken anything away from me. You have given me everything. A home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning. I am not trapped. I am right where I want to be." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you, Wade Yates." "I love you too," Wade said, "and I always will." The years passed, and the Yates family continued to grow and thrive. Samuel became a strong, capable young man who helped run the store and who had a natural talent for business. Rose was bright and curious, always asking questions and reading everything she could get her hands on. James was adventurous and fearless, constantly getting into trouble but always with a grin on his face. Clara was gentle and artistic, spending hours drawing pictures and making up songs. Wade and Elena watched their children grow with pride and a touch of sadness, knowing that soon they would be grown and starting their own lives. But they also knew that they had done their job well, that they had raised good, kind, capable people who would make their mark on the world. In 1897, when Samuel was 19, he announced that he was in love. Her name was Lucy, the daughter of a farmer who lived just outside Seligman, and she was sweet and hardworking, with a laugh that reminded Wade of Elena. Wade gave his blessing, and Samuel and Lucy were married in the same church where Wade and Elena had been married almost 20 years earlier. The wedding was a joyous occasion, and as Wade watched his son dance with his new wife, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had given Samuel the kind of childhood he himself had never had, and now Samuel was starting his own family, carrying forward the love and happiness that Wade and Elena had built. Over the next few years, Rose, James, and Clara also grew into young adults. Rose became a teacher, James took over the day-to-day operations of the store, and Clara married a kind young man who worked as a carpenter. Wade and Elena became grandparents, a role they embraced with joy and enthusiasm. By 1905, Wade was 55 years old, and Elena was 52. They had been married for over a quarter of a century, and their love had only deepened with time. Wade's hair was now more gray than brown, and Elena had laugh lines around her eyes, but to Wade, she was as beautiful as the day he had met her. One evening, as they sat on their porch, now old and familiar, Elena said, "Do you remember the first time you came into the store?" Wade smiled. "How could I forget? You told me I was going to bleed all over the porch." Elena laughed. "You were so stubborn. I knew right then that you were going to be trouble." "Good trouble, I hope." "The best kind." She reached over and took his hand. "Thank you, Wade." "For what?" for giving me this life, for loving me, for building this family with me, for making me laugh every day. Wade brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I should be thanking you. You are the one who saved me, Elena. You brought me back to life. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their grandchildren playing in the yard. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything, and Wade felt a deep sense of peace. He thought about the man he had been when he first arrived in Seligman, broken and hollow, convinced that he would spend the rest of his life alone. And then he thought about the man he was now, surrounded by love and laughter and family. It was a journey he never could have imagined, but it was one he was grateful for every single day. You know, Wade said softly, you were the only woman who ever made me laugh. Elena lifted her head and looked at him, her amber eyes warm and tender. And I did not even know I had missed that sound, Wade continued. I did not know how much I needed it, how much I needed you until you came into my life. You changed everything, Elena. You made me whole again. Elena's eyes glistened with tears, but she was smiling. You did the same for me, Wade. We saved each other. Wade pulled her close and kissed her, pouring all his love and gratitude into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. Come on, Elena said, standing and pulling him to his feet. Let us go inside. The children will be here soon for supper, and I need to start cooking. Wade followed her into the house, his hand still holding hers. As they worked together in the kitchen, laughing and talking, Wade felt a surge of happiness so strong it almost brought him to his tears. This was his life. This was his family. This was everything he had ever wanted and more. And as the evening light faded and the stars began to appear in the sky, Wade Yates knew without a doubt that he was the luckiest man alive. He had found love in the most unexpected place, and it had transformed him completely. He had learned to laugh again, to feel again, to live again. And it had all started with a woman who refused to let him give up, who saw past his walls and reached the heart he had kept hidden for so long. Elena had given him the greatest gift of all, the chance to be happy. As they sat down to supper with their children and grandchildren, the room filled with noise and laughter and love, Wade caught Elena's eye across the table. She smiled at him, that same bright, infectious smile that had captured his heart all those years ago, and Wade smiled back, his heart full to bursting. This was home. This was family. This was love. And Wade Yates would not have traded it for anything in the world.